The same could be said of the regulation we will present to the Council and the Parliament before the end of the year to follow up on the Liikanen report on the structure of banks. Here as well, there is an issue of trying to ensure that we can deal with a crisis in any of our banks, and therefore that we are not faced with a situation where we have banks that are too big, too complex, and too interconnected to fail, and at the same time too big to be saved. Because there is one thing that is sure, is that we cannot redo what we did in 2008. Our public finances would not stand it. And therefore, if we have this type of animal, too big to fail and too big to be saved, we have a problem because we have an issue we cannot deal with. And this is in this context that we will propose this regulation post-Liikanen report. And again, calibration will be extremely, extremely crucial. So now, did the new regulatory framework lead to more fragmentation, which is a sort of assumption behind the question you ask? Well, I would rather argue the opposite. Did we have any type of convergence pre-2007? Not much. The truth is, we didn't have much regulation either. So the issue of convergence was less of an issue than now. But I would certainly argue that because of the way this regulatory process happened under the auspices of the G20, we have achieved a degree of convergence that was probably never achieved before in history. So I would, if I may, put into question the underlying foundation of the question, because I think we do have a very high degree of regulatory convergence. Does that mean everything is fine? No. We still have a number of divergences in very key areas, some of which are fairly unavoidable. I just took the example of Basel III. Well, we chose to apply Basel III and actually Basel II and Basel I to all of our banking sector. And of course, this choice entails a number of consequences. You cannot deal with a small German cooperative bank the same way as you're dealing with Deutsche Bank or BNP Paribas. So we had to adapt the system, which arguably introduces small elements of divergence in the system. On the other hand, let's not forget that Basel III is a minimum harmonization. And the US just showed in issues like leverage ratio that they consider going above or implementing more than Basel III, which also introduces regulatory divergences. So there will always be this type of issues. But I think it's absolutely key that we reach a degree of divergence that is compatible with ensuring that trade flows across the Atlantic in financial services. And in this respect, an issue you did not mention, which is absolutely crucial, would be that the US finally implement the IFRS. That, in my view, would solve a number of the divergences that are currently happening and would be more powerful if you're talking about banks than the small divergences you can see in the implementation of Basel III. So, all in all, I think we are in a fairly convergent agenda. Now, we still have difficulties. I think, again, I don't want to focus too much on the US, but the conviction of Mr. Barnier is and has always been that we should be able to create a single transatlantic market for financial services. There is no real reason why we couldn't do this. We have the maturation of our system is about the same. Our rules are very similar now. So there is no reason why we could not achieve that. And we believe it would be crucial we achieve that, not only for the sake of our economies, but also because if you look at our share in international trade in financial services, I just said we're still over 70%, but this share is eroding rather quickly to other parts of the world. And my view is that if we want to remain collectively, the US and us, the financial center of the world, we need to be able to offer to the industry a level playing field across the Atlantic. And this is the very reason why we pushed very hard to include in TTIP the financial services. And we still believe they should be included. Because there's basically three ways of ensuring convergence. The unilateral way, which we do and the Americans do, we call it equivalent. They call it substituted compliance. That means I judge that your system is substantially equivalent to mine, and therefore I will allow you to trade in my area under your original registration in your home country. We have put forward a regime of equivalence in most of our regulations. You alluded to this, Anthony. Arguably, they're slightly different from regulation to regulation, sometimes for bad reasons, because even if the Commission and the Parliament are striving to ensure a coherent approach, we don't always succeed. So you may find here and there differences that are not justified, and sometimes for good reasons, because the rules for CCPs are not necessarily the same as the rules for in AI, FMD for alternative investment managers. They shouldn't be. But that's the way we do it, and that's quite powerful. Of course, the problem is when you may have small differences that in the end are locked in the system, and this is what we're experiencing currently with our friends in the CFTC regarding our talks over derivatives. And then that can be a source of great concerns, and it is a source of great concerns to us, but we're confident we can resolve it. Now, the second way, Peter referred to it, is to discuss informally. And this is what the Transatlantic Dialogue is about. But of course, when you discuss informally, you do not have any real commitment to reach a result. And actually, we're discussing informally for ages with the US. And the least that can be said is that the Transatlantic Dialogue didn't bear much fruits, which is one of the reasons why we have equivalence provisions in our various regulations. And the last one is to have an international agreement. And this is why, again, we insisted that the financial services are integral part of the TTIP. Because in an international agreement, you don't have to rely on the goodwill of this or one or the other party. What happens is that when you disagree on something like, are you substantially equivalent to me, then you have an arbitration mechanism. And you have a way to settle the disputes. And in the end of the day, one of the parties or the two parties have to slightly adapt their system for it to work fluidly and being able to, for the trade to develop. So we do believe such a system would be a lot more beneficial to both economies. We do believe it would really be a major step forward towards achieving this single transatlantic market that we wish to see coming. And this is the reason why we still have very big hopes that not only it will remain on the agenda, but that it will lead to concrete results. One last remark on this. We disagree with our American friends that you can separate regulatory convergence from market access. Why? Very simply because both them and us grant market access to people we trust the regulation of and the supervisory system. If you don't trust the supervisory system and the regulatory regime of a foreign power, well, you simply don't grant access to their players, or you force them to register in your own country and be submitted to your own supervision. So, and the Americans are not different from us in this respect. This is exactly what they do, and this is the reason why Mr. Gensler is requesting all companies to register to the CFTC. And this may be the reason why in the future we may request the American CCPs to register to ESMA. But that's not a desirable outcome. I mean, it would be a lot more effective and efficient to be able to reach agreements under the pressure that if you don't reach agreement, there is somebody else that will settle the dispute and set the regime that everybody should observe. Thank you very much.